We are Backstage, New Old Heads podcast. I am Major 7th, 1/4 of the New Old Heads podcast, and I'm honored to have DC's own great producer, great musician, great songwriter, the one and only Odyssey of Sound, to have a talk with us for a few minutes. What's going on, brother?
I'm good, man. How about yourself?
Man, I'm blessed, man. I cannot complain. We appreciate your time.
Oh, man, I appreciate y'all having me.
All right, let's get right into it. This is a question that I had. I want to kind of talk about your influences, because I read somewhere where they said you lived next to the bass player for Parliament, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, Mr. Gary Scheiden.
There you go.
Yeah.
So kind of talk about your experiences in terms of your influences. I know that had to play a big part in you coming up as a youngster, as well as just like being around that analog equipment, things of that nature. So kind of talk about your influences coming up, and even if that had a big part of it.
Sure. I got a lot of different musical influences from my childhood that kind of played a role into the type of artist I am or what I even listen to in my own time. My mother's family is Black American from D.C. and the surrounding area. My grandfather's from St. Mary's County, Maryland. My grandmother's from Montgomery County, Maryland, and they met in Washington, D.C., where my mother, aunts, and uncles were raised. That all plays a role into it because the rural areas that my grandparents are from were close enough that my mother and all her siblings frequented it, and so did we, in weekends and summertime, etc. And my grandmother, along with her brothers and sisters, all played bluegrass music, country music, church music. And that's what I grew up listening to at my grandmother's house. My great Uncle Warner, he's still a touring musician till the day. He's 90. And he tours with the Smithsonian Folk Music Preservation Society.
He's 90?
Yeah, he's still touring. Plays the guitar.
Word.
My grandmother plays the guitar and sings in church every Sunday. She's a director of her church choir. You know? And then that's my mother's side. My father's from the Sudan, and that's Northeast Africa. And my father plays the oud, which is like a traditional Middle Eastern guitar. It's a big belly with double strings on it. He plays that, and all of his brothers play instruments as well. So on both sides of my family, my mother's side, my great-grandfather played the fiddle. My grandmother plays the guitar. My mother sings. My Uncle Warner plays the guitar. And on my father's side, they all play traditional Sudanese music. So I was raised around a lot of eclectic music growing up, not just rap per se.
So you had no choice. You had no choice, right?
Well, I had no choice to like a lot of different music. Not necessarily
right.
Making it came from my next door neighbor, Mr. Scheiden, who was a member of Parliament Funkadelic. I grew up with his sons, Garrett and Marshall, who also were into music. And Mr. Scheiden had a full analog studio in his house. And before I knew I wanted to produce, that was just where we kicked it and hung out. We just messed around on all of the equipment, ADATs, full mixer boards, recording, just having fun.
That jumped out to me because a lot of people won't get that experience to be able to, get a chance to see the full process.
Yeah,
so that really jumped out to me. Something else I read that's very interesting. They talked about your travel, like when you travel to different places and you kind of soak up the atmosphere of where you are in terms of, you just go out and about to get inspiration to make new records and new songs. Kind of talk about that process, and also talk about, do you get a chance to do that while you're on tour? Do you separate the two? Is it just the tour, or do you do a little bit of everything?
Oh, while I'm on tour, I'm very productive still. I'm constantly thinking of song ideas, melodies for instrumentals to produce on the road, and when I come off, I'm constantly taking emails from clients who need certain things. Like I just recorded a voiceover for a commercial.
Nice.
While I was on the road, like a couple days ago. I'm constantly working. My travels play a huge role in my music process because I've spent half the year on the road.
Right.
If I wasn't productive on the road, I spend half the year not being productive on making the music that has me on the road in the first place.
Right.
So I had to learn to adapt to that. And that had a lot of effects on me. It made me pretty much abandon hardware because I couldn't bring all the hardware with me everywhere.
Right.
I wanted to travel as light as possible because I was on the road so much. So to maximize my time and my efforts, I switched over to software, and I look out windows, planes, trains, automobiles. I have conversations with fans. I listen to what DJs play before and after the shows. I listen to the music that goes by in people's cars when I'm walking around getting lunch before a show. You know, I'm observing constantly, feeling the rhythm of popularity or lack thereof, things that people have similarities in that they might not realize it. So I'll be able to come to Indianapolis and say, okay, that same song was playing in Main Man's car who just went by. That was playing in Fort Wayne.
Right.
And I bet you they don't know they like the same song because this dude's black and this dude's white.
Right.
And they probably come from two completely different environments. I'll take that information because it's all it is data.
Right.
It's data, and I'll store that data and I'll regurgitate that into my music.
That's what I knew it was going to be something that deep.
It's a lot of data. My travels
it.
are just data. It's social awareness.
You talked about hardware. That leads into my next question about the production. With your production style, being a producer sometime, you like to isolate, so you kind of sit back and create. But with your sound, I hear a lot of live instrumentation. Now, is that a collaboration where you guys kind of have a jam session? Or is that something where you'll come up with a sample, chop a sample, or maybe have a interpretation or a replay? Is it a combination of both? Because the groove is so strong, it almost sounds like a jam session to me.
No, I'm very much anti-jamming. Jamming is for me, not very productive because you're basically casting a very wide net hoping to catch something out of a groove in a random jam versus being controlled. So I don't maximize like my time effectively if I'm jamming. So what I'll do is I'll compose melodies in my head, jot them down with MIDI instrumentation, and then I'll call my keyboard player, Ralph. Say, Ralph, come up. Here's an idea of a melody I have. Play that. Ralph will play that and he'll go home. And then I'll call Dennis, my bass player, and say, here's the block chords for a bass note, a bass line that I want. I want you to come up and play it. And Dennis a lot of times won't even come up and play it. He'll stay in DC and I'll send him the files. He'll play over it and he'll send it back to me. And then I'll chop up what he played and put it into the beat. And then I'll call my homie Jason DeSue on trombone, who lives around the corner, say, Jason, I wrote out some horn sections that I want you to play. Jason will come in and do the horns. And I'll graph out a whole album. So when I finished what I call skeletons of the tracks,
right,
I'll then say, all right, I want Rhodes on this, Wurlitzer on this, piano on this, upright piano on this, electric piano on this. And then Ralph will come through and will literally within 4 or 5 days play over the entire album. And then he'll go home. I'll chart out what I want on each song.
Okay.
Bring in each musician who plays that particular instrument, let them play over the course of a few days, and then bring in the next musician afterwards. And that'll allow me to finish an album in a very, very fast amount of time.
It sounds efficient. It sounds very efficient.
All about efficiency. That's it. Work smart, don't work hard.
I heard that.
Yeah.
Okay. To kind of go towards the album, I know you released ICEBERG. Lead singles, Things, which I love. It's got a nice groove, almost like a house feel to me.
Yeah, for sure.
80s-ish. Like I really love that record. Was there an inspiration behind the album in general? Was there an inspiration behind that lead single? Like, was there a reason that you picked that? Was it because of the vibe, or was it just
absolutely
like everything is meticulous, like it's thought out? So absolutely. I'm sure there's reason behind it.
Absolutely. I mean, the overall theme of the record was I wanted to encourage critical thinking. I feel like in the world, the thing that I see similar, no matter where I go, is there's a severe lack of critical thinking. Whether it's France with their elections, Sweden being pushed to being more right-wing, the United States of America and our elections, the social and political climate of the Middle East, lack of critical thinking.
Right.
People aren't seeing past what the media tells them. They're not seeing past themselves, more importantly. So each song on the album was dedicated to encouraging critical thinking. Why I picked Things for the single came from analyzing the data. I just came home in August of 2016 from European tours, of European festivals. And I noticed that I had to speed up a lot of my music to play festivals because it didn't have a festival feeling to it.
Right.
So I told the band I want to have something more upbeat so that I can drop it in for festival season. So I came home and made something faster, 120 BPMs, 4 to floor. It's very simplistic that people can move to.
Yes, sir.
That I didn't do, that I love that type of music. And I want to challenge myself to see if can I contribute to that. So I made that song so that I could have something for festival season. Mm-hmm. Why I chose it as the single, because I never want people to get comfortable with me. I never want people to say, this is the conscious rapper with this style of beat. And I didn't want them to expect that because of the Good Fight, the previous record that, oh, I know what he's going to give me. I wanted to make people uncomfortable. And I wanted a single that was like, I didn't see that one coming, but it's undeniable. It's good music. And to always ensure that I can survive and have my own lane. Because the minute it's obvious what you're going to come with, people become used to you, familiar with you. They don't appreciate you. You don't excite them anymore. And it's a very, very dangerous game to be me, to come from underground rap.
Right.
And it's been a very interesting transition in my career, if I'm honest with you, of coming from a roots of very purist, strict, hardcore hip hop lines.
Yes.
And then realizing that most of those are invisible walls that I had to break past and say, no, I can sample from things that are not only vinyl. Or I don't have to only sample. I can promote myself and it not only just be about my music. That's not a bad thing. These are all these rules I put in my head because I was this purist idealist of a hip hop artist.
Right.
And then you realize the relationship between art and commerce. And then you realize that underground rap demonized it. Underground rap told me for years it's not about money.
Right.
It's about keeping it real.
Yes.
And then you realize that all of these people who are telling you this, they're getting money.
They are getting money.
And many of them aren't being honest with themselves. And it took me a long time to find a way to balance being honest with myself and pursuing income for my art. And when I realized that, it changed the course of my music, my sound, my marketing. And I've every year seen fewer and fewer people asking for more songs from my back catalog at a show. There's always somebody who's like, yo, the show's great, but why didn't you do this song?
Right.
The song's 13 years old.
Right.
The majority of these people don't know that song.
Right.
You know, I wish I could, but I got to worry about the overall. And that was the most important thing I learned, is worrying about the overall, not just the individual.
You touched on something, you brought something to my attention when you talked about being a purist, talking about embodying the culture. On our podcast, we talk about artists that are, so in this era, you get people that say you're called an old head if you like this type of music.
Sure.
You got the younger generation that's coming up. To me, there's a fine line between holding the younger artists accountable, but also, letting them be young. Because I feel like in hip hop, the younger artists don't necessarily appreciate the elders in the culture. Mm-hmm. Do we hold the younger artists accountable, or do we let them just do them? Like, is there a balance in between it? Is it kind of a fine line?
Do we, as Western people, do we as Americans, outside of music, appreciate our elders? I ask you that question.
I would say the way I was raised, I appreciate my elders.
You.
Yes.
Now the whole.
As a whole.
We're talking about the whole.
As a whole.
Not the individual.
Yes, sir.
As a whole, do we as Westerners appreciate senior citizens and elderly people?
I would say no. I don't think it's consistently across the board.
I would agree with you. I would agree with you that Western society does not revere and appreciate elderly people. They are seen as a nuisance in the way of our youth and our progress, because we're a capitalist society that is based on getting as much as we can within our time, that we matter first. So we're not looking at a rap problem about reverence of elders. We're looking at a Western problem, period. We're looking at a capitalist problem. And what music embodies capitalism more than any other genre? Rap. So who would have a bigger issue with the lack of reverence for elders?
Right.
It's not these kids' fault.
Yeah.
It's our culture.
Yeah.
We don't respect older people.
Yeah.
We don't revere them as a people, as a society. So why would we expect our rappers to? When our rap is based on capitalism and is based on the individual. It's a very egotistical form of music. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's all about bravado. Where's the reverence for elderly people in it? In general, I mean.
Yeah.
Top 40. I'm talking about popular music.
Sure.
You know? So I think many of the issues that we have with rap are a reflection of our society, because rap is the most beautiful reflection of American society. Whatever's going on in America is going to be in a rap song within minutes.
I would agree.
I
would agree.
So don't look at the individual, look at the whole. Rappers are just a reflection of us. We just tend to focus on the negative stuff. But we're just a reflection of our culture.
It's a dope answer. I actually never looked at it that way. That's a very good answer. That's a good approach. I want to kind of spin it back to the tour. And I see Belgium, I see Germany, I see France, I see the Netherlands. So you guys are everywhere. But my question to you would be, what should the concert goer expect, like, from an Odyssey show? Like, what's the vibe? Like, what is the experience?
Eclectic music, really good musicians, music with a message that's also entertaining. That's one of the key points of the music that I'm trying to make today, for it to be educational and entertaining. Because I feel oftentimes a lot of indie rap is educational, but it's not entertaining. And I feel a lot of mainstream rap is entertaining, but not educational. And finding that balance between the two is something that I strive to do. And I think that you get that at our shows, where we have fun on stage, the music is fun, you can feel it, but if you want to, you can listen to the lyrics and think at the same time.
All right. Well, we appreciate your time, man. I really appreciate you sitting down with us.
I appreciate it.
I'm ready for the show.
All good, man. Thank you.
All right. Major 7th, the new old heads. This is Odyssey. We'll catch you next time backstage. Peace.